Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I'm happy to be here with you today as we're going to be talking about several very hot button issues, probably some of the most hot button issues that face America at any time in its history. We're going to be talking a bit about abortion. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court. We're going to be speaking about court packing. This is a big deal. It's something that has been hot button for decades and will continue to be hot button no matter what decision is finally made. And we're going to address this with you today, and we look forward to seeing your comments about this. But before we get started, we do want to say, if this is the first time that you are seeing the channel, we welcome you and thank you for joining us today. We also want you to know that we do long-form political commentary here, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out to you on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all of the internet social media that the internet overlords will allow, to hear your voice about the issues that matter, the issues that affect us all anywhere in the world. In fact, we support the First Amendment, your right to free speech, no matter what country you are in, no matter where you are, because even if your government disagrees, even if the internet overlords disagree, we believe in your inalienable right to free speech. And so we hope you join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to be part of our live stream and add your voice to the conversation. So let's get to this really tough and really difficult question, because it's a big deal. It's something that affects so many people, and there are so many different ways that people look at this. We're talking about abortion and how it's going to affect the Supreme Court, whether or not this will be the impetus that will allow Joe Biden to pack the courts, an issue that was very big in the 2020 presidential election, an issue that he would not speak about at that time and has been very close-lipped about that since then. So let's go over this. As you may know, today, there's been a lot of news. People are talking about the Supreme Court. In fact, just a few hours ago, there has been a request from the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, looking to go to the Supreme Court to fight the Texas abortion law. Now, the Texas abortion law, very simply, is that after 6 weeks, abortions are not allowed if there is a heartbeat of the child, because the child has its own body, and if it has a heartbeat, it is alive, it is a human being, and it is the requirement, the obligation of government to protect the innocent. That is why governments exist. That is their first and primary priority, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And so, therefore, that is the ruling, that is the reasoning behind the Texas abortion bill. And it takes place after 6 weeks. Approximately 65% of abortions take place within the first 8 weeks of pregnancy. Many Democrats are opposed to this. Many Democrats support abortion. Not only supporting abortion, they support long-term abortion. They want the ability to be able to abort a child at any point up to and including, in many cases, birth. And I don't want this to seem like I'm overextending this. I'm not exaggerating the situation. Just look at the laws that we see in this nation, especially in some of the most blue states in the nation. Let's take a look at New York's new abortion law in 2019, as updated on May 23rd. This is from factcheck.org. And so they go over that law. The law permits abortions after 24 weeks if a healthcare professional determines the health or life of the mother is at risk, or if the fetus is not viable. The key word here is health. The health of the mother, not her life, not just her life, but her health in general. Now, very clearly in this, they take the position in New York State, a reasonable and good faith professional judgment based on the facts of the patient is within 24 weeks from the commencement of pregnancy, or if there is an absence of fetal viability, or the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health. Again, the key words being health. That an abortion is available from a doctor if they believe that a woman's health will be affected. And that's a key word, because when we look at that and we look through from fact check alone, New York's law does not define health. What health? Mental health? Physical health? What is the determining factor? And in essence, this allows anyone after 24 weeks in New York State, late-term abortion, to be able to abort a child that is viable outside the womb. That is a fact. In fact, we've even seen this in other states, like in Virginia, where it was also discussed in 2019. This is from the BBC. Virginia late-term abortion bill is labeled infanticide. Now, this bill did not move forward at the time, but what they were speaking about in Virginia was the ability to end a child's life at the moment of birth. It's a very strong statement. This is what the Democratic Party has been supporting. And again, looking at, this is the BBC reporting, what did the bill propose? Under current Virginia law, third trimester abortions are only permitted if the risk to the mother's life is substantial and irremediable. Language that the Democrats want to remove. That it is not just about life-saving procedure, it can be done under any terms. The Democratic bill sought to allow for late-term abortions if the mother's physical or mental safety were at risk. The procedure would also have been required to sign off by only one doctor rather than three. So essentially, this bill would allow one doctor to make a determination to say that because of someone's mental or physical condition, they could abort a child at the time of birth. That's what the bill allows. Now, I know many people will say, well, that's not how the bill would function. That's not necessarily true. Many times we have seen many laws where the consequences of the law are entirely separate of what is written, because how it reacts in the real world is not necessarily the way that some may intend it. They may not have the intention to kill viable children at the time of birth, but that is how the law can and will be used by some individuals. There are doctors and there are individuals, women, that will seek to end a birth of a viable child when it is not necessary, in late term. It will happen. Think about what happened in Loudoun County in Virginia. What did we see? That the good intention of protecting transgender rights has been abused by individuals, in this case, one individual who used that law, wearing a dress, to go in to sexually assault minor women, minor childs, little girls. And he did it twice, and it was covered up. Because the consequence of a badly formed law, the consequence of the intention is separate from the intentions of that law. The intent was to protect transgenders, but the abuse of the law is a consequence that they had not accounted for because they didn't think about it, and is a reality. The same thing exists with abortion. Whether you agree with it or not is not the question that we're speaking about today. But it is a position that Democrats have strongly held and have been fighting for many years. The ability to not only maintain abortions, but to have late-term abortions. As you can see, this is trending news at this moment. Something that is less important, something that is less trending, not the qualified immunity, but the fact that conservatives have been resigning from Joe Biden's Supreme Court commission. And this commission, some left-leaning sources believe, was designed to fail. What is that talking about? How does that apply to abortion? Well, we're going to get into that because we want you to remember the 10th Amendment allows for a state to have rights that supersede the federal government. In fact, the 10th Amendment says that all rights not delineated or given to the federal government lie with the states and the people. So states, before there was Roe versus Wade, had different laws on abortion. After Roe versus Wade, they have different laws about abortion. The late-term abortion that is allowed in New York State is not this late-term abortion that is available in, or wants to be available by Democrats in Virginia or in Texas. States' rights apply. But the Biden administration is going to the Supreme Court to hear this out and to try to protect the ability to kill viable children in the womb. That brings us to Joe Biden. And it brings us to the Supreme Court, because we look at the left and they have been very adamant. They want to change the Supreme Court. They don't like the position of the Supreme Court at this time, and they want control. They want to go back in time to where they had a majority and therefore could change the laws of the United States to move the courts, the judicial system, into a more progressive mindset. This has been their goal for a long time. And this has been one of the major things they've been arguing about. In fact, if we go back and we show you, this is from the Financial Times. And this was an article that was written in October of 2020. And in that time, there was a question, Joe Biden, looking at the appointment of Justice Amy Coney Barrett to replace Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because she had died suddenly. And many Democrats, many of the far left, were asking Joe Biden to answer a simple question. Will he pack the Supreme Court? Will he push through any kind of legislation or proposal to Congress to add more Supreme Court justices so that the liberal-leaning, the progressive-leaning wing of the Democratic Party would be able to either balance or overweigh the conservatives that are there because they don't like conservative justices. They want a progressive system in the United States, in our courts and in our legislation and in our executive branches. To quote the Financial Times, for weeks, Mr. Biden, the Democratic presidential nominee, has sought to avoid stating his views on the matter. Most notably, he declared last week that he would explain his position, quote, the minute the election is over, end quote. We know for a fact that is a lie. He did not do that. He made that promise, and then he backtracked, and he changed his position, and he is still yet to give us his position on this issue of packing the court. They go on to say that on Monday, the former U.S. vice president rode back, clarifying that he was, quote, not a fan, end quote, of expanding the Supreme Court beyond its current panel of 9 justices, but declined to elaborate further, quote, I don't want to get off on that whole issue, end quote. Now, this is a very important issue. Many people actually find that to be incredibly important. They based their vote on whether or not there would be a president who would have the ability to add more Supreme Court justices to the court. They want to prevent the Texas abortion bill from existing, even though the state has the right and the state went through the proper procedures with its legislature to pass this bill, which is generally approved of by the people of Texas. They don't want that. Even if the people want that, even if the public opposes late-term abortion, which it does, they still want these laws in their place. They want their view to stand regardless of what the public or the procedures allow. So court packing was a big deal in 2020, and Joe Biden avoided as much as he could every chance to answer the question. He made it as ambiguous as possible, allowing Democrats and progressives to hold a dream that if he were to be elected, they would be able to pack the courts and to change the Supreme Court into a liberal Supreme Court, or at the very least, to even it out, to give themselves a chance to be able to control things like the Second Amendment and abortion. In January, he finally made an answer that he would have a commission, and he would put that commission forward so that he could get an answer. Now, mind you, the public has a voice in this. And as we covered in October 27th of 2020, while this issue was in the minds of the public, it was found in YouGov polls and every poll that the public opposes packing the court. Just as they opposed this in 1937, the last time that it was seriously considered by a president to pack the court, to change the makeup, to add politics to the Supreme Court, to be able to add members so that the president at that time would be able to get the outcome that he wanted. That was Roosevelt. Joe Biden is facing the same situation. The public opposes this. Members of his own party oppose this because it's not in the best interest of America. The consequence is to make the Supreme Court a political battle, not a judicial one. They'll no longer be looking at laws based on the Constitution or precedent. They'll be looking at it as advocacy. They'll be promoting their political ideologies or the ideologies of the parties. That he was going to put together a commission. They would be given 6 months, 180 days to come up with a decision to find out, is it feasible? Is it in America's best interest to be able to have a larger Supreme Court? Should it be expanded and therefore allow him to add multiple members of the Supreme Court? Or more likely, Kamala Harris, as we don't think he would be in office at the time. Most likely would happen after the November elections in 2022. That's our opinion. The commission put together by Joe Biden did in fact put out a draft. And some coverage was made of this, like on CNN, that the White House Supreme Court Commission releases a draft materials punting on the court packing, but appears to favor term limits instead. And this has been the position of the major left-wing media. The majority of the media has been pushing this idea that if they cannot get the court to be packed, then instead what they will do is try and to limit the amount of time that the existing justices and those in the future will be able to serve, that they'll have less time. We actually took a look at that. We actually looked at what was said, because when you look at the news media, they don't actually link to the actual panel. They don't link to the draft, to any of the wording of what this commission has done. So we're going to show you, and links to this document will be available so that you can read this in full at your leisure for everything that we are discussing today, so you have an opportunity to know where we're drawing our conclusions from. This is the document from the White House, from the White House's site itself. And this is on the membership and size of the court, part of the discussion that was made by the Biden Commission on packing the court. We're going to go straight over to page 14, going into page 15, because I believe that's one of the most relevant parts of this document. And again, you can see this in the link in the description so that you will be able to read it yourself, because I know in preparing for this, it is difficult to actually find this document because news media will not give you the opportunity to see it for yourself, to read it for yourself. They'd rather tell you in 30 seconds what they think about it rather than tell you, here it is, think for yourself. And on page 14, we see that the commission states there are other reasons to believe expansion efforts might have negative effects on the Supreme Court's long-term legitimacy or otherwise undermine its role in our legal system. Court expansion, court packing, today could lead to a continuous cycle of future expansions. To be sure, any Supreme Court reform would likely require a unified government, a president and Congress controlled by the same political party. So that's an important statement that they're making here, that we're going to make this more political. So political that you would need to have a president and a Congress that is controlled by the same party, a majority of Congress, kind of like what we have right now, kind of like the supermajority that President Obama was able to walk into in 2009. And that if you have a Congress other than that, which is usually the case, where at least one of the houses of Congress are not aligned with the president, then you would never be able to get through a Supreme Court justice, which would hurt the United States. They go on to say that the public might come to see the court as a, quote, political football, end quote, a pawn in the continuing partisan game. And we'd have to say, that's correct. In politicizing the Supreme Court, in politicizing the appointment of Supreme Court justices just to add more people, this is purely political. This is gamesmanship. This has nothing to do with, is the Supreme Court functioning as it was designed? Because that answer is yes. Is the Supreme Court doing its job? Yes. Now, you may be left-leaning or a member of the Progressives, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, especially the Ithaca chapter, which is incredibly violent. And maybe you say, well, no, we need to pack the courts. But that's not saying, is the Supreme Court doing its job? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? Yes. Are they coming up with the decision that you as a member of the far left want? Maybe not. Maybe they don't. But that doesn't mean they aren't doing their job, nor does it mean that they're not doing what the Constitution has designed for them. It just means you don't like the outcome and you want to change the outcome. Therefore, it is completely political. It's not like we're looking at the southern border where we're looking at inefficiency. It is Secretary Mayorkas is inefficient in protecting the southern border. That's why it's an open door. That's why 12,000 out of 17,000 Haitians living under a bridge were allowed into the United States. We see that Kamala Harris, who was assigned the job of being on top of the immigration crisis at our southern border, where 1.5 million illegal aliens at least have been caught and have entered our nation illegally, she's busy at a bakery. She's busy politicking in a church, which is a violation of law, by the way. She's busy doing everything except her job, making videos with NASA, for NASA with child actors, and not telling you that she's made a completely fictional video. That's inefficiency in government. That's when you could say, well, we need the government to be more efficient, to do their job better. But what we're talking about here is not the Supreme Court isn't doing its job well. It's that the outcome doesn't match the political ideology of some people in the Democratic Party. And they want to change that, even though the majority of the American people do not agree. The majority of the American people consistently, every time this issue is brought up, do not want to see this happen. We will break our system of government. We will break the Supreme Court. And that is what this document says overall. In looking through, in all of the reasonings and the history and the explanation, we see that members of this commission from Joe Biden are consistently pointing out that there are problems, that this will have consequences, and those consequences are going to be negative, that this will not be to the benefit of the public. And you can read this over and over for yourself. As you can see, Biden's Supreme Court commission was designed to fail. They're not doing what the left wants. They're not going to pack the court if the commission is abided by. Mind you, this commission has no ability to change laws. They have no final power. The power still lies with Joe Biden and the Democrat-controlled Congress, both in the House and in the Senate. Joe Biden can make whatever decision he wants, but he's using the commission as his excuse. Well, the excuse isn't working well for the left because the commission's saying it doesn't make sense, that there are problems with this and it's not in the best interest of the public, and the public doesn't want it in the first place. This is completely partisan. It's so partisan, in fact, that members of the commission have resigned from the commission. Two of the conservatives, a Caleb Nelson, who is a law professor and a former clerk to Justice Clarence Thomas, and also Jack Goldsmith, a former top Department of Justice lawyer under President G.W. Bush, left the commission. They don't like where this is going. They see the political partisanship that's at play here. That's why he's presenting the abortion bill to a Supreme Court that likely will not support this. They will stand by. They are very conservative. They look at the Constitution as it is written, and they support that. They are what's more absolutist in their view overall. And the 10th Amendment is very clear that any state has a right to pass whichever laws it wishes while abiding by federal law. They have not outlawed abortion, and you may again disagree with that, but that's what we're looking at. That's without any partisanship. That is what the law states, and the 10th Amendment allows that. And Joe Biden is being pressured to change that, which is political. There was another part of this that was mentioned, and this is where I think Joe Biden will go. This is the way, this is his excuse to be able to make a change in the Supreme Court that can get through, that won't look as partisan as if he were to just pack the courts. They will introduce term limits to the members of the Supreme Court. In fact, what they're looking for is a term limit of 18 years. That's the number that they're putting in there. And I want you to see this. So again, this is from the White House itself. This is the draft as it stands at this moment, while there were two conservatives as part of the commission who are no longer there, which makes us believe that the final version will have substantive changes that will be more in favor of at least term limits, if not court packing. And that is, and they state it very clearly here, the average tenure of the justices who left the Supreme Court from the founding until 1970 was less than 18 years. So the court has historically experienced greater turnover than a system of 18-year terms would likely produce now. Well, there's the excuse. There's their answer right now. They want to add a term limit, 18 years. You can be a Supreme Court justice for 18 years because that's what we saw from the founding of this nation and the creation of the Supreme Court until 1970. For over 150 years, 200 years. This is what the Supreme Court has been, except that's not entirely true. You see, from 1970 until today, the average Supreme Court justice tenure is actually 26 years. So it's changed because people live longer and because we have better medicine. And we should also note, in that same section, we see here it says, a recent study that created models with varying assumptions and then ran simulations of the effects of 18-year terms under each model concluded that, quote, the danger of increased instability due to term limits is very real, end quote, and needs to be weighed against the potential benefits of the term limits. This is going to create more problems than it's going to serve. It isn't going to resolve the question of how quickly and how many cases the Supreme Court has, because there's more justices or they're constantly turning over. You're going to see in more turnover, more reversals of positions of the Supreme Court. You're going to lose the faith and confidence of the American people. This is in the document itself. You can read it for yourself. They see this as being somewhat more of a viable option than packing the court, but yet it is still not in the best interest of the American people. And they cite reason after reason over and over again of that. How is that playing out right now? Well, we see that the Supreme Court, according to October 15th by the Associated Press, Supreme Court Commission talks positively of shorter terms. And going into the article, when you look at it, for its part, the Commission devoted a significant section of its materials it released to discussing term limits for justices who under the Constitution have life tenure. The Commission described term limits as the proposal that appears to have, quote, the most widespread and bipartisan support. It's political. This has nothing to do with the Constitution. This doesn't have anything to do with improving the Supreme Court. It's about politics. They go on. Biden was asked by reporters Friday if he supports term limits on the Supreme Court, and he said no. But that's before politics are introduced. That's before Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, representing the House of Representatives and the Senate, apply pressure. It's before the progressives across the nation apply pressure and make their protests that are inevitable. During the discussion of the draft report Friday, however, a number of commission members said they were in favor of term limits before studying the issue, but have since changed their minds. And more than one member said the draft came close to endorsing term limits, a view they disagreed with. Harvard University professor emeritus Lawrence Tribby said that he began the process thinking that of all the possible changes, term limits would be the most obvious, quote, relatively uncontroversial, widely supported across the spectrum, and probably beneficial, end quote. After the review process, the Biden commission, however, Tribby said, quote, I no longer think it is likely that this would be a good idea. This is not a good idea. Coming from Harvard University, coming from the left, we know this commission has been pushing term limits, and they know that this is a partisan issue. This is politics. It has nothing about improving the efficiency of the Supreme Court. It has nothing to do with improving the capabilities of the Supreme Court. It's not fixing a problem in the Supreme Court. This is purely politics. And even from the left, they see this as a problem. This commission, in 30 days, they will have their report out, and we know that this is going to be political. This is a political hot potato. And I say that because when we look at Bloomberg News and their reporting from February 16th of 2021, we already knew what the outcome was going to be. As they note in their article, term limits more likely than court packing from the Biden panel. In February of 2021, this year, in February, we already knew the outcome. We already knew that this effort was going to recommend term limits and not court packing. It was that obvious. This is how much politics is involved as opposed to anything else. And in that article, as they go on, progressives want bold steps like expanding the court. Court packing, not realistic with a bipartisan group, according to legal experts, because court packing is not recommendable. It doesn't help. And they say in there, quote, to legal experts, the presence of Goldsmith is a sign that the commission won't embrace court packing or other sweeping changes sought by liberals. Fredrickson and Goldsmith didn't respond to inquiries about their membership. Quote, the commission, if it continues to be built this way, will end up being rather mainstream in what they do, said Elliot Slotnick, a political science professor at Ohio State, studying judicial politics in reference to the four members whose names have been reported. This is about political appeasement and trying to change the nature of our courts to make them more left-leaning. And we should note this. Goldsmith is the reason why they didn't think that term limits and packing the court would move forward. This is something that is now possible. Goldsmith left. He didn't agree. He didn't agree with the conclusions and where this document was going, where this conclusion was going to be coming to, and what this will mean for the Biden administration going forward. Now, there's one other thing I want to put forward here. So we can understand, and it was absolutely predictable, from October of 2020 until February of 2020, and even today, now in October of 2021, we knew court packing isn't going to happen. The public doesn't want it. There is no political will for it outside of the progressive ideology, the Democratic Socialists of America. So that leaves us with term limits. which some believe is a compromise position. And I'm sure it will be presented as a compromise position that is purely political in its nature. It does not help anyone. It does not improve anything. It only makes the Supreme Court more of a political tool. But let's think about term limits for a moment. Because why are we imposing term limits? Why are they going to be pushing term limits for the Supreme Court when we don't do that for members of Congress? We have term limits on the president. We don't have it on members of Congress. And we want to put them in place for the Supreme Court. Why can't we do that for Congress? Mind you, every time this has come up, it has died in Congress. Members of Congress will not allow themselves to be limited in term limits. This is good for the president, they say. This is good for the Supreme Court, they will say. Why is it good? Why is it good that we can have senator upon senator, congresswoman or congressman, year after year, they serve for decades, but it's not good for the Supreme Court? And you may say, well, Mike, there's not that many people. It's not that common and consistent. Okay, look at the seniority in the United States House of Representatives, just the House of Representatives alone. And when we look at this, I want you to notice, and you can look this up for yourself, the link will be in the description. It is the first 50 members have been in Congress for more than 20 years. More than 10% of the people in Congress at this moment have been there for more than 2 decades. There are at least 58 members of Congress in there right now that have been there for at least 2 decades to the day. That is huge. And we have dozens and dozens and dozens of members who have been there for approaching very close to 20 years. There's a limit on the president. At the absolute maximum, you can only be president for 10 years. They want to give the Supreme Court 18 years. But in terms of Congress, you can serve forever. In fact, if we looked at it, if you look at the House and the Senate together and the amount of time, we have had members who have spent 59 years in Congress, which was Representative John Dingell. And that was at the time when he retired. He wasn't forced out. He retired. We see Senator Byrd had 57 years, 56 years, 53 years, 52 years, 50 years, 49, 48, 47, 46, 45. Look at this list. Look at how long members can serve. And the main reason that they stop serving is the main reason why anyone gets out of Congress. They died. It is more likely that a member in Congress will either die or retire than ever be voted out of office. Over 80%, whether you're looking at the House or the Senate, 80% of the members will get reelected year after year, no matter what. Term limits are important. It's great for our Supreme Court. It's great for our presidency. Then why isn't it good for our Congress? And that's why you're not seeing a lot on this story. That's why you're not hearing a lot of news about this. Not a lot of people are talking about it. And I know it won't be the most popular subject I've ever covered, but it's important. So let me bring this back to abortion, because I want you to understand everything that's going on. Abortion makes it possible for Joe Biden to push in term limits. He might even try and get to pack the courts. In fact, I would expect that under the decision about the Texas abortion law to protect those with a heartbeat after 6 weeks, innocent living human beings that cannot defend themselves, which is the job of government, whether you agree with it or not, is a different question. But because of the states' rights issue, to overturn that states' right, we're going to see pressure coming from the Democratic Party, because they want abortion. They are in favor of late-term abortion. And state after state, they are pushing to be able to abort children, to kill children in the womb, even at the moment of birth. That is a fact. You don't have to like it. You don't have to like the wording and what it means. That is a fact, as I have shown you. So this will give Joe Biden the support he needs that he doesn't have at this moment. His administration is a failure. It is an objectively, it is a failure. And he needs the support of Congress. This will give him support. Because members will be able to say, because they want to have greater ability for abortion, they want to have late-term term limits, they want to have an increase in the ability of abortions, because they support this strongly, they will back Biden. And that will give him the opportunity to take the one issue that is most appealing, which isn't court packing, it's term limits. And thus they will try and put term limits onto the Supreme Court justices that they won't even put on members of Congress. Because Congress, well, that's where the nobles are. They are untouchable, especially because Democrats would suffer massively. They would lose members like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, so many others would be thrown out. They want to maintain their power. The best way to do that, there are no term limits for Congress. There must be term limits for the Supreme Court, while that Supreme Court is held by Republicans. And to get rid of those Republicans as quickly as possible. And they'll do it under the term that we're doing this because of abortion, protecting women's rights. And they're going to say that they're doing it to protect you, to bring balance back to the Supreme Court. This is going to be for you. And they're going to say, we're being moderate. It's not like we're trying to pack the court, which you hate. We won't do that. This is a moderate, middle of the road. This is our compromise. We won't pack the court. We'll just put in term limits. Term limits that we don't believe in. Perhaps you think our conclusion is lopsided. Maybe you think the sources that we've provided to you aren't accurate. Maybe you believe that we don't see the full picture here. Maybe you support abortion and think that anything that will promote abortion is a good thing. Maybe you believe that it is important to balance the Supreme Court at all times when it's out of favor. Maybe you believe that it's important that we just need to add more justices, because then it will give you more of the rulings that you want. Maybe that's what you believe, and we'd like to hear what you think. We want to hear your thoughts on this. We look forward to seeing your comments. And please, if you've made it this far, we hope that you do subscribe. We hope that you take the opportunity to allow us to be able to share with people in our live stream and in our videos the opportunity of free speech, to tell us what you think. We look forward to hearing your comments and your thoughts, and we look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon. Thank you.